Welcome to the If I Had More Time podcast hosted by Mariners Church. This series invites you into a casual conversation with our senior pastor, Eric Geiger, and our teaching team to hear a few insights and truths they wish they had time to include in the weekend message. We hope you enjoy it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today to the If I Had More Time podcast. I am here with Kinton Beshore, our pastor emeritus. Kinton, thank you so much for joining us.
Love to be here with you.
That sure is a fancy title, a pastor emeritus.
I know, it's a big thing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I do. I walk around to, people go, what does that mean? And I go, I think it means something really important.
That's all they need to know.
I know, but I don't really know.
That's it. Will you tell us just a little bit? I mean, it's hard to capture all that you are to Mariners Church just in this podcast here, but would you share a little bit about you and your journey with Mariners? For those of you that have not met Kinton before,
wow.
He, all of us really are standing on the shoulders of some really faithful living.
Oh, that's kind of you to say.
Leadership. So I'd love for you to share who you are.
Well, I started when I was in my 20s, and Mariners was a church that had gone through a split and pain, and my first week, there was only 200 people and hurting, not really sure there was a future. So the first thing I had to learn to do was how to heal a church, which I'm not sure I even but so we found a way together. Wow. But then in healing, probably what I discovered is the most important thing is a vision, a sense of what is God calling us for the future. And that's really what heals people when you have a sense of tomorrow. So, what did that mean? So finding a sense of tomorrow, what God's called us to be, who he's called us to be in the community, and capturing, kind of a sense of why did God want Mariners Church? In a belief that what he wanted is a church that would faithfully teach God's word, help people get energized with a sense of, I'm here to reach my friends with the good news. God's given me my story, and so I want to learn to tell my story. And then in that, have a sense of, but I'm in this community and I'm for them. So what does it mean for us together to be people who love our community and then growing together? And so we wanted to be a church that taught God's word, help people connect in community, understand that each one's a believer, but everybody's got a sense of a story. And so those were some of the key kind of ingredients. As a 20-year-old, I'm kind of going, okay, let's be this. But it was really, it took a hold. And so we began to move together. And really, all I really know how to do is kind of what you see me do on the weekends when I teach God's word. But we had wonderful people that were really, so what does this mean to move a church forward? So finding a building, then buying land, and then building buildings. And, each time the church kept growing, but then we'd have to find new facilities. And, God's given us wonderful people that came alongside and were willing to dream big dreams and risk big things and give real generously to create something in this community. Because I love our community. If you look at where we are, we get to be in a place that really, I think, defines the nation in many ways. And so I think that our people are on the front of a lot of things, whether it's in business or in culture.
So true.
So the culture wars lead here, and we see them first. We get to, I kiddingly sometimes say that, I live on the Holy Coast, because if Jesus were to come to America, he would come to, I think, Southern California, largely because we have all the sinners. And Jesus hung out with all the sinners. And really, we have world-class sinners in this place. They don't mess around. They go big. And
what a title.
It is. And so if you want to be where I think Jesus would have shown up and said, he wants to be a friend to sinners, and take it serious, you got to be in Southern California, because people in Wisconsin, they don't know how to sin.
Never heard of it.
No.
Well, I mean, that only gets you to what, your year 1 or 2 though, and eventually you would become the senior pastor at Mariners Church.
Well, no, that's when I was a senior pastor. I came with 200 people,
And you
and
started
I was
though
in my late
as
20s. I
as the
started as a
senior
college
pastor?
pastor before that, but I was a senior pastor, and I came, and there was just my first Sunday as the senior pastor, there was only 223 people in the room.
How
And they were hurt and damaged,
Yeah.
and there was no sense of where we were going. So
Wow.
that's really my story.
Yeah, it's so important to remember this, kind of where we came from as we're launching new congregations.
And what I love about that congregational model is that those congregations we're starting are exactly the size of the church where I started. And you are with a group of people, and there's nobody else that's going to make it happen. If we don't make it happen, there's not a bunch of people that we can go there. It's us and no one else. And we're, they're in places in the community where we get to share God's wonderful kindness and love, and people get to go into their community and share their story of God's work in their life, and then get to invite them to a place where they get to see God's love in action, because that's really what a church is. I mean, no one can understand all of what I think Jesus wants people to understand about his love and his grace without seeing it in action in a group of people. And that's what a church is. And so, a congregation, we're called to be who Jesus was in that community.
Yeah.
And so they get to hear a story, but then they get to come to a place where they see it in action and in lives, and they go, this is different.
Yeah.
And they get to live out the values that we read in the Bible. And so then it makes sense. And they go, oh, I get it. And it attracts them to God's love, which is, that's what we are to be, a big attractional community of people that are helping people understand God's love.
That's amazing. I remember I was first an intern at Mariners in 2017.
Oh, wow.
So it was I think it might have been the summer that you guys were announcing your transition.
Yeah. And
I just want to affirm what you just said, that what I was captivated by when I came here was the vision, and I've never seen people so activated.
Yeah.
They bought in and internalized this vision of following Jesus and fearlessly changing the world. I was in outreach, and man, is it special. So I fell in love with that particular aspect of Mariners, and eventually ended up back out here, and still the same. That legacy has lived on. It's strong.
It is.
And I'm so thankful for the relationship that you and Eric have. The fact that you're here today is just like a miracle, of a successor and predecessor, to have such a strong relationship.
I love Eric, and I'm so proud of him in every way. I think he is such a great leader. I love how he teaches God's word. I love how he loves our church and loves our people, and he feels called to it. So it is just a joy to watch him work.
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, again, thank you so much for being here and being with us this weekend too. We're in our new series, Stories Jesus Told, going through the parables of Jesus. And Kinton here at Irvine, he was teaching, and many other lead pastors are teaching at all the congregations this weekend, all on the same passage out of Matthew. And it's a story on forgiveness and forgiving. It was a beautiful message, Kinton, and I'm so thankful. And I got a chance to hear a lot of the lead pastors too as they were preparing for this weekend, and I'm confident that all congregations are receiving such a beautiful word this weekend, calling us to forgive as we have been. You had so much insight and truth in your message, and one of the things that you opened up with was this idea that we all want things to be fair. And a lot of times we try and make those things fair ourselves and make things right. And it just got me curious, like, what makes you think, or what do you think makes us desire that? Like, why are we so, I don't know, why is, when something is done wrong to us, what makes us want to make it right?
Well, fairness, I mean, that's such a profound and right concept. I mean, we have a sense of, but things should be fair. I mean, they should be equal. And And there's a lot of truth in that. But the problem I think that we have is we have a concept of fairness. And in our concept of fairness, our brokenness always sees it wrong. And fairness through our lens usually isn't as fair as we think it is. And so it gets twisted. And that's really ultimately what sin does, is it takes really good things and it twists it. And so justice is a great concept, fairness is a great concept, but really only God is just, only God is fair. The problem is we step into it and we go, well, but I'm fair. I have a sense of fair. And then, what I've seen, and the value of age is that you just get to see things over and over and over again. And if you watch marriages, people who hold on to the concept of marriage, the concept of fairness in marriage, they destroy a marriage. There is no healthy marriage where one or two people are holding on to fair. Wait, I did this, you should do this, I do these things, I do that. It's all this sense of there's a contract and it's transactional. And so, and there's scorekeeping and a ledger, which has nothing to do with love. And so without even thinking about it, concept of fairness, which we distort and twist to begin with, we bring into our life, especially relationships, which is the story that Jesus told. And we think, oh, no, fairness is a really good concept. And it's noble and right. But what Jesus shocks us with is this story is fairness never resolves relational conflicts. He startles us with this idea that forgiveness is the only road if you're going to resolve relational conflicts, which just absolutely makes us go, no, wait. Then they've got to apologize. They've got to ask for forgiveness. They've got to do something. Then we got to, somehow fairness has got to come into it. But forgiveness is not fairness. And the story he tells is about this giant debt and forgiveness of a debt. It's to cancel a debt, to release a person, which feels so wrong. And so you're going, wait, we can't do it. So, I think this is one of those stories. I think Eric, in introducing the series, talks about the upside down kingdom. Theologians have forever talked about how that's everything that Jesus is saying. It just flips it on their head. And what we think is so natural, this is just natural. Fair, it's just so right. And I spent years wasting my time in my marriage thinking, even though I read the story, thinking that somehow, like with Lori in our relationship, that wait, I did this, I did that, trying to do a ledger. Look at what I've done. So don't you owe me? Don't you, which is all fairness. It never produced love. It was a phenomenal waste of time. The amount of energy that I spent doing that was, God, what a waste. And it doesn't work. So the beauty of this story, which is 2,000 years old, is that it is current for all relationships today as it was 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. I'm in year 2 now of marriage. And so it's hitting me a little bit too close to home.
And so you're probably negotiating all the time and go, no, wait a second here. And so isn't this and that?
Yeah.
And there is a place of, saying, okay, but ultimately love is built where there's a sense of, okay, I'm with you and here we go.
Yeah. And you and Lori do have such a beautiful, beautiful marriage. It's so, somebody to look up to who have modeled ministry and life and leadership together. Yeah, absolutely. I'd love for you to just share with everybody, as a pastor for so many years and just someone now who is still loving and discipling, and what have you seen forgiveness and unforgiveness both do to people? What's the impact of both of those?
So I think today one of the things that I'm real sensitive to is watching the very first little signs of unforgiveness, because what I've seen, sadly, over life is where it leads to and the wreckage it does way down the road. When people get way down the road, everyone sees that wreckage, and rarely can you fix it. But the surprise is the little things that you sense where somebody gets bumped and there's just a little bit of a, I can't believe, and you just sense the angst, and they're, and it's, they said, or they did, or, they heard. And right at that point, I like saying to them, well, what are you going to do with all that? Angst. And, well, and they start running down a road, which is to fix or to change or to negotiate. And really, you go, well, you think that's going to work? And it's surprising how quickly people will go down that road and they'll feel so right and righteous in it. And even though, they can be a leader or a friend, that you go, it's not going to work. And it's shocking to them. And they go, yeah, but it's got to. I mean, it's just not fair. I mean, and I love catching people, just in a conversation to drive them to the point where they'll say, but it's not fair. And that's the most beautiful thing. So I'm a little hideous, I guess, in that, because they'll say something and you go, oh, and then I just keep digging until they go, but it's not fair. And you go, that's right. It's not fair. It's not right. It's so not right. You're so right. It's so right. And people don't understand the high cost of being right. And they think that, being right is not the most important thing in life. And there's a lot of times people are right and they are destroying their marriage, they're destroying their kids, and they're right. And there wasn't anybody more right than the Pharisees in Jesus' day. I mean, they were right on many things, but they were so right, they were wrong. Being right is not all what it's cracked up to be. And being fair is really not what it's cracked up to be. Now, God's fair and God's just and God's loving, but every time we take on one of his attributes, we're twisting it and bending it, and we're not as clean with it. And that's why God just doesn't give us permission to be the judge and to play judge.
Yeah. What's the cost? You talked about what a costly choice it is to be right.
Well, Jesus identifies it in his story. He says, he goes, you're going to be locked up in a prison and be tortured. So, and he says, you're evil. And so, I mean, when Jesus says you're evil, you go, that's a really brutal statement, because he says, when you don't forgive, you are being evil. You are a part of evil. You've embraced evil. You've brought an evil into your house, which I think surprises people, because they go, well, that can't happen to me as a believer. Well, of course it can. I mean, it just, it says, Jesus says it's evil when we don't forgive. And he says, basically, we're locking ourselves in a prison of our own making, and we're being tortured. So I talked about it in the message, but the idea of it is, well, what does that look like? Well, we see it all the time. I mean, basically, you just take all of the pain and the hurt in whatever that situation is, and you just start dragging it with you. So everywhere you go, you're dragging. Well, that's torture, to just be dragging. So the pain, the hurt, the angst, the bitterness, the resentment, the damage that thing happened in that relationship with you, you start dragging it. And so everywhere you go, you drag it, and you drag it into every situation. So you drag it into your marriage, you drag it into your job, you drag it into your friendships. You drag it into your marriage, but into your kids. And so, the Bible talks about taking sin into the second and third generation. Well, that's what you do. You're just taking raw pain and you're going here, and you bring it with you. And everybody knows. And so you just go, who wants to do that? Well, he's saying, don't do it. You go, how long are you going to do it? How far are you going to do it? Well, Jesus says, the only way you can stop it is to forgive it. You drop it. You let it go, which is what forgiveness means. And so, you go to let it go, and it's so counterintuitive, but you go, well, you want to keep dragging that? And if you keep dragging it, what's it going to do? And you can see it. I mean, one of the things I think I love most about the story is that the people know. And what's surprising is I can be around a person in seconds, and right away there's something that they're harboring bitterness or resentment. Somebody's name comes up and they can't help but go, just spit on them. And they act like they're not saying a big thing, but it's like, well, that person, or down. And you just see it and you're like, oh, wow, where's that going to go?
Yeah.
It's going to go to prison, and it's going to go to torture, and you're evil. And you go, no, I can't be evil. You're evil when you do it. And so it's just such a clear line that Jesus says. And you're playing with something that is just so dangerous. And I love the verse in Ephesians where it says, it goes, look, you don't want to hold on to sin, and you don't want to hold on to anger. You give Satan a foothold. And I think people are surprised by that concept where, literally when we have bitterness, resentment, anger, unresolved pain in a relationship, and you choose to not forgive, you basically are inviting Satan into your life, giving him a desk and a space, and say, now you just go to work. And he will, and he's going to work to destroy relationship. He's like, that's what I'm going to destroy. So it's like, I'm going to twist the story. I'm going to bend the story. I'm going to lie to you. I'm going to accuse. And he's there by right. He's there by invitation. And so I get, as a believer, I don't think that a believer can be possessed by Satan or anything like that. But influenced, and set up a little desk where he's going to work and saying, okay, just bring it on. And then those stories that twist and twist. And I said, and it's shocking to me, and it isn't an overstatement, I get to be with people at the end of their life. And I am shocked. I mean, they are going out and they know it. And their family saying, you're holding on to bitterness, resentment, there isn't forgiveness. And I walk in and I say, you want to keep this? You want to hold on to it? And they go, yeah, I'm not forgiving. Yeah, I can't forgive. You don't know what they did. And they have a story, and that story is so twisted into their soul that's like, if you knew what they did to me and how they treated me, and they tell the story, and I listen to it, and I say, if it was just you and me, I'd say you have a right to be mad. But it isn't between you and me. This is between you and Jesus. And Jesus says, you don't have a right. Wow. And they go, well, I do, and I'm not forgiving them. And you just go, wow. So you think of how tortured a soul has to be to say, no, I'm not, I'm going out and I'm holding on to it. And that's how they go out. So now, are they a believer? Absolutely, they're a believer. Yeah. And, that's not the question. Because the Bible's clear on how we're a believer, we trust in Jesus. But Jesus says over and over again, you don't forgive somebody, you are cutting yourself off from the full experience of God's wonderful grace and kindness. Wow. And his forgiveness and understanding it in your own life. You're cutting yourself off from it. And there's a bunch of things like that. So people who don't, if you don't get baptized, do you miss something? Yeah, you get, there's an experience that it's like, oh, I don't get that. If you don't get connected with God's people, do you miss something? Yeah, you get, and there's all sorts of things. And you don't forgive, do you miss something? Yeah, you really miss understanding God's grace and his kindness.
Wow. The statement that you just made, that it's not between you and them, that person. Mm-hmm. This is so simple, but so profound. It's between me and Jesus.
That's right.
And if we could just reframe every feeling that we have of bitterness or anger towards somebody, if I really viewed that between me and Jesus,
well, that's what he does in the story, because he goes, the kings, I forgave you. Yeah. It's like, did you miss that? Yeah. And it was a big time. So now I expect you to forgive. This is between you and me.
Yeah.
And so, the story is real clear. This is an issue between you and Jesus.
I'd love if you could close our time by helping us see the other side, which is the picture of forgiveness. What does forgiveness really bring us? How have you seen that bring life?
Forgiveness is, so I've got to see it in, one story is when you get to see people and there was a lack of forgiveness, like especially at the end of their life, and people go, yeah, I want to let it go. And they do. I mean, you can see on their face a change. I mean, a person who's there's just a heaviness and a scowl, and it's like they get a smile. And wow. I mean, it is just a profound change just by releasing someone. For me in my own life, so the person that, I think if you're married, the person you're going to need to forgive is the person you're married to, because you just bump into life. And so Lori does certain things that just, no one can hurt me or offend me or send me off like she can because she's the closest. And so she does something and, yes, she's wonderful and perfect and all that, but still she bumps into me. And there is a part of me that just, you'd think I know it, but I hold on to it and I think, and so I just, and if I hold on to it for even a day, that it gets twisted inside of me and I think she doesn't and she should and she's so insensitive. And I'm surprised at how that can get twisted in a day. And if I hold on to it multiple days, it's insane. And that's why it says, don't let the sun go on your anger, because it has a way to get really whipped into it. And it cracks me up because, they'll be in it and I'll just sit down and I'll write, a lot of times when I'm really frustrated, I write down why I'm so right and she's so wrong, and I'll just, have at it. I'll never send it to her because that would be insane. But what it does is I look at it, and then what it does is it lets me really look at my thinking, and there's a couple things that have happened. The first is I have so overestimated my goodness in the story. I just have a story that I look at, and it's comical because I go, I am not this good, and this is insane. And the second thing is I have highlighted her badness, which is, and she is not this bad. And the other thing is that I have a good sense of understanding forgiveness. I go, I do not want to drag this around anymore. I'm just letting it go. So I let it go. And so, and I think the discipline of forgiveness, and I do this on a daily basis. I write out where I need forgiveness, which is confession, and I receive it, and then it's like, whatever Lori does to me, it's like, oh, hey. But I still react to it, and I hurt her, and she gets, tougher. And I would say, it's probably not wise, but I think forgiveness is harder for her. She has a tougher road to get there. And so I watch her because it's like, it's a gift that she has to give. So it doesn't help. I don't need to give her a message or do anything. I just watch it, and it is funny how it's a journey. But as soon as you decide to do it, it's done. It's not like, it just goes. It's like that. And it goes like that for me. When I've decided to do it, it's done. It's over in the sense of, I'm forgiven. Now, rebuilding a relationship, that's a different issue. And so, reconciliation, both sides have to own their part. That's a different story. But as far as, I'm done and I don't need her to own up to it and I don't need to, it's just, I'm free.
Freedom was the word. Yeah.
That's right.
That I was thinking of too. Man, and it's lighter.
It's so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so much so.
Yeah, we're held back from so much when we hold on to that for so long.
Right. And there's just no joy, there's no sparkle, there's no freedom. When you're holding on something and you need them to ascend to you did this, you need to do that, I need to, and I'm holding you, you don't even find a way to reconciliation, because reconciliation is we both have to own our parts. My part is to own my part, but not to measure, go, okay, so I own mine, then she owns hers, and then you start to rebuild trust. That's a way bigger game. Yeah. But if you don't have forgiveness, you don't even get there. And it's no fun trying to reconcile because you're always going, okay, you did this, there's scorekeeping and everything. It's painful.
So important. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And thank you for just faithfully teaching this text and this story. Now my mind is just kind of running with what might our church look like if we were to all really embrace that?
Well, that's what we're called to be. That is the ultimate, when all of us are forgivers and we move into it, it's staggering to a community. But when we're not, when we let little things divide us and we start keeping score and get real sassy and snarky, there's no forgiveness in that. There's no beauty. But when there is this beauty of, oh yeah, there's as much relational hurt in this community as there is out there, but we find a way through it because there's forgiveness because of what God's given to us. It's a whole different value set that startles the world, and they have to see it in us. They're not going to see it unless they see it in us. That's the way God designed it.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kinton. It's an honor to have you, truly.
I'm always here.
How many podcasts have you been on, truly, outside of Mariners Church?
I try to avoid them.
Yeah.
It's not what I do.
But you're so great at it.
No,
You really are.
No, I like talking to people.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
We're so grateful that you're here. And thank you guys so much for joining us for the If I Had More Time podcast. Thanks for listening to the If I Had More Time podcast hosted by Mariners Church. We hope to see you next weekend at any of our congregations throughout Southern California or online. To view our locations and service times, be sure to check out our website at marinerschurch.org.